Check this out. Look at the moves here today in the public count. Meta stock for me was up $36,000 today. Tesla stock was up $23,000 for me today. AMD was up almost $15,000 for me today. Palantir $11,000, Celsius $8,000, Cheesecake $7,000, right? Amazon $7,000, Revolve $3,000, SoFi $3,000, PayPal $2,000, Elf $2,000. The moves are astonishing, and this just on one risk-on day. Now imagine for a moment. Just imagine if this market explodes to the upside for a few weeks or a few months. Can you imagine the moves in these stocks if this was just off one day? And we're seeing this stock move for me $36,000. And that's just in one portfolio. That's just a public account. 23,000, 2,000. I mean, imagine for a moment if we go risk on for the next few weeks or next few months. Imagine what some of these numbers will show in that sort of environment. Which reminds me, AMD, almost green. Yes, AMD. We're only down 2% on that baby now at this point in time. It is almost green. Basically, if the market was even risk on again tomorrow, AMD would be green for us. And see how fast things can switch, folks? Things can fast switch very quickly in regards to the stock market. Now, somebody in my private stock group's Discord chat actually did a poll here very recently. They did it on March 20th. And basically, they asked private stock group members, basically which of these stocks would perform the best over the next 3 to 5 years. Elf, Nike, AMD, Nvidia, Meta, Amazon, SoFi, PayPal, Google, Celsius. And by the way, if you want to let me know in the comments section which of these stocks you think will perform the best over the next 3 to 5 years, I would love to hear from you guys. But 84 people inside the private stock group basically voted on this. I think we have about 1,500 members or so in the private stock group, maybe a little bit more than that. So 84 folks actually voted on it. And AMD ended up coming up the winner, chicken dinner of the bunch. That got 39% of the votes. 33 people voted that AMD will be the best performing of those stocks over the next 3 to 5 years, which, if you want to know which one I voted for, it started with an A and it ended with a D out of that bunch, okay? And I also posted this on the same day. I said, anyone know which stock I voted for? Started with an A, ended with a D. Rest I'm keeping a secret. I said, it would be hilarious if Nike and Google returned the best over the next 3 to 5 years, given they had 0 votes, because Nike had 0 votes at that time and Google had 0 votes as well. Now, complete difference, because I posted something somewhat similar, not exactly the same, but basically on X. I asked folks which stock of the Mag 7 do they think is going to perform the best over the next 3 years. And then I went ahead and responded to my own post here today, and I said, here's my thoughts on the top 3 stocks of the Mag 7 over the next 3 years. And I said, the stock I think will perform the best of all the Mag 7s over the next 3 years is Meta stock. The number 2, Amazon. And the number 3, Nvidia. That is my belief of those particular stocks. If you said I had to post a number 4, I'd probably say Google McDougal. Okay. Now, it was interesting seeing, obviously, on my X, it gets fed out there, the algorithms, it gets put in front of a ton of different people, right? A lot of people that don't follow me or don't follow me that closely, things like that, right? And it was interesting seeing how many people were like, Tesla is going to perform the best, right? Tesla's going to perform the best. Tesla, right? And, Here's the way I'll put it, right? Tesla, I was a stock I was buying back in 2018, 2019. The shares I still own today, these were shares I bought in the spring of 2019, right? And up 2,000% even after the most recent crash on those. And I've taken so much in profits over the years, it's incredible, right? But here's the thing. 10 years experience, right? When I was buying Tesla stock, I already had 10 years experience. I was not just some new Joe to the market or something like that, right? The issue we have right now in the market in regards to a lot of these Tesla folks, they're new Joes to the market. They just got in the market in the past few years, and they look at people like myself and they say, Tesla's such an amazing stock. Look at how much money somebody like Jeremy or some others that bought the stock, let's call it prior to 2020, look at how much money they made on that. I want to make that money. Doesn't work like that. When I was buying Tesla stock back then, they had I would argue 4 key points that made me so bullish on Tesla. First one is Tesla back then was an innovation beast company. They were showing off new product after new product after new product after new service. It was incredible. The innovation pipeline at Tesla was unparalleled at that particular time. There was a lot of people referring to Tesla, not a lot of people. There's a very few in the know people that were referring, as in me, they were referring to Tesla back in that time period as Apple back in the Steve Jobs days. We were at that sort of innovation ramp, right? The second component that made Tesla such an amazing buy in back in like 2018, 2019 was sales were booming for the company. And I didn't really see that stopping anytime soon. We should have had sales boom for many years to go in the future, right? The third component was we had a phenomenal brand. Tesla's brand was so cool. It was loved. And a lot of the brand was also around Elon Musk, who was such a beloved figure. No one had really anything bad to say about Elon Musk other than maybe people in the investment and short seller community, which is like 0.1% of the population. Anybody that knew anything about Elon Musk had nothing but great things to say about that. The man's a genius. He's a legend. Like incredible the things he's doing for humanity, all this stuff, right? And the fourth component I didn't put up here is we had an insanely focused CEO. Elon's focus on Tesla back in those days was nothing short of historic. The man, if he needed to spend time on the in the factory trying to figure out how could we best do this or do that, he was willing to do anything it meant for Tesla to be a success. Incredible focus from the CEO, right from the top, right? Well, think about Tesla today. Are we an innovation beast? No. The last time we showed off a vehicle, right? Outside of Cybercab, and we'll talk about Cybercab in a moment if that vehicle's ever going to come. Listen, the last time we really showed off a vehicle was 2019, which was Cybertruck, right? It's 2025. 2025. Second, our sales suck. Our sales are garbage. Look at the US numbers, look at the European numbers, look at the China numbers. Back when I was investing, we were starting a sales boom cycle. Sales suck now, right? Third thing is, our brand is the worst I've ever seen Tesla's brand by far. And it's not even close. Our brand is incredibly bad. It's gotten so bad that the FBI's had to get involved. The FBI. That's how bad the brand is. I mean, we're talking a historic ruining of the brand, right? Like, we've never seen stuff like this. And then the fourth component, we have a CEO who hasn't cared much at all about Tesla for the last several years, compared to a Elon Musk that cared tremendously about this company, factually back in the day, right? So I show you something like this, right? Cybercab, potentially a vehicle that might come out. That vehicle is supposed to come out with no steering wheel and no pedals. You think that's coming out in 2026? Dream on. Dream on. Maybe someday it comes out, 2029, 2030, but we're not launching a vehicle with no steering wheel and no pedals anytime soon. I wish, that would be cool, but no, not with where we're at right now in regards to self-driving, okay? And so I look at a stock like Tesla, feels like more of a dead cat bounce than anything in the short term in regards to this one, right? So if you're wondering, what is it going to take for Tesla to really turn around in this stock, not just to be a trading vehicle? Because basically Tesla's just a trading vehicle right now. You want to go risk on, like Tesla pumps in the short term, right? Goes risk off, Tesla sells off 50% and crashes, right? We got to turn around these things. If we can become an innovation beast company again, now we're talking. If our sales can start booming again, now we're talking. If we have a great brand again, now we're talking, right? But we got to turn around those things. And so the thing I'll tell everybody, look outside of Tesla for opportunities. There's plenty of opportunities, and there's stocks that are going to absolutely decimate Tesla's returns over the next 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. And it's not even going to be close. There's so many other opportunities out there. Don't get so focused on this one company, because investors have paid and paid and paid again for that over the last many years. And I really don't see that ending in the short term. Like, you're going to keep paying for this price of just trying to focus in on this one company that people like myself made, millions of dollars on, right? All in Tesla investors have made millions of dollars on this stock. People look at us and they're like, oh my gosh, they made so much. Tesla was just one stock I made a lot of money on. And so don't get just caught up into that, right? I look at a stock like AMD, I think this is the next legendary buy. Because if I look at all the things that made Tesla such a great buy in the spring and the summer of 2019, I see so many of those in AMD. AMD is a company at a low valuation that's kind of been thrown out, stock price hasn't done anything in many years, right? Meanwhile, the company's an innovation beast. You look at the chip cycle they have going on, you look at what they're doing on the software front, company's innovating very quickly, right? The sales are booming for the company. We've seen a clear turn in the sales now, and sales are starting to boom again for the company, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon for years. Third thing is we have a great brand at AMD, phenomenal brand that's so well respected inside the overall tech community and from all the big tech companies. And we have Lisa Su, an extremely focused CEO. She's not worried about running some other side company named Twitter, named X, right? She's not worried on trying to do Doge and all this government stuff and trying to, make a bunch of people mad that don't like a certain political party. She's not worried about all that. She's worried on AMD, day in and day out. That's where her focus is. And that adds up to great results over time. And so when I look at AMD, I see a lot of the same things that I saw back when I was investing in Tesla many years ago, right? So, and there's so many other opportunities out there. Elf's a phenomenal opportunity right now. Meta, even though that stock's gone beast, up $800,000 plus in that stock, it's still an opportunity here. SoFi's an opportunity. Revolve's an opportunity. Amazon's an opportunity. Fubo's an opportunity. Celsius an opportunity. Cheesecakes. But you know what the greatest thing about many of these companies are? Right? Many of these companies have very proven CEOs that are extremely focused on those companies day in and day out. And when you got a proven CEO who is focused and wakes up every day that their number one goal is to make their company more successful, their employees more successful, their shareholders more successful, it means for a lot of good results over the next many, many years. When you got somebody that wakes up every day and is focused on a lot of other things and like this company is like their 10th most important thing, it doesn't add up for good results long term. It does not add up for good results long term, right? Hey, I want to thank you so much for watching that clip here today. I hope you really enjoyed that one. What you're looking at right now is 1000xstocks.com. 1000x does not just show you a billion different metrics that are completely irrelevant. It's curated, mandatory metrics, advanced metrics, curated for long-term investors, not for traders, so you can understand a company on the highest level possible, how it operates, and most importantly, making judgments on whether you want to invest capital into a company or not. Understanding the upside, the downside with companies. Is that company worth our investments, or shall we keep our hands away? So how you can access 1000xstocks.com is you can go to the description area of this video, or you can go to 1000xstocks.com, apply for access to the service. Where I want to start today's video is a very important time period. This time period was back in 2020. And the reason I want to start right here for today's video is you're going to understand what happened at that particular time and how it relates to what we're going through right now and how it relates to a lot of people maybe watching this video right now. So essentially, we had a ton of new retail investors enter the market in 2020 and 2021, right? Now, the first big group of investors that were retail folks that really entered the market were folks in that March to May 2020 timeframe. And the reason being is the stock market was in the news every day. Stocks were crashing. We were going through the fastest stock market crash in history, right? And so that got a lot of retail folks, which retail investors, it's just a fancy term for like mom and pop investors, people that invest their own money, right? You, me, everybody else. And we had a massive influx of new retail investors during that particular time. Then we had another new big group that got in the stock market in the second half of 2021. Now, the important thing to understand the difference between these, the big group that got in March and May of 2020, they were people that were kind of in the know, that knew at least a little bit about the stock market, and they knew enough to understand when the stock market crashes, buy stocks. And that's what those folks did. Now, the other big group that came in that second half of 2021, we'll call those folks the folks that were not in the know. Those are people that essentially, let's call it, they saw their neighbor getting rich in the stock market and they said, I want to get rich too, right? They saw all the people making all that money while that stock market came back and the S&P 500 went from, 20, just over 2K at the lows, then to shortly after it was like almost 5K. And this group was like, dude, I want some of that money. Like, what the heck? This is easy out here. Look at all these people. They made all this money. Oh my gosh. Look at all these stocks that have gone up so much, right? Look at Tesla. And so we had two separate groups. Now, that leads us into what ended up happening, right? Because what ended up happening is the second half of 2021 group that got in the stock market, those folks all flooded out of the market in 2022 and left the market for years. They said, the hell with this crap. Oh, no, no, no. And a lot of people think it's just because the stock market went through a bear market in 2022. No. It's because at the end of the day, you had 2 years of no gains. So basically 2022 was just a year where those retail folks that got in the second half of 2021, they just left the market. Now, some of the folks that got in 2020 stayed around. And the reason being is some of those folks actually had gains to show for. So some of those folks were able to get through that hard spell of 2022, while this other group, a lot of those folks had never made money in the market. And all they had done is seen losses. And so their perspective of the stock market was this is a gambling trap. This is a fool's game. Because all the stocks they looked at were all down. All the stock market indexes were down. There was nothing that had gains. Nothing. All the popular stocks, all the big tech stocks, right? The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Dow, the Russell 2000, everything was down. And so they said, the hell with this, right? And they left the market. They were exhausted, right? I want to take you for a moment. Let's go for a ride together. And let's go back to when I got in the market. In late 2008 into 2009. When I was getting in the market back then, I would tell anybody about, essentially I'm getting in the market, like I'm starting to invest, I'm really excited about this, I'm really passionate about that, right? People had nothing good to say. Nothing good to say about the stock market. I mean, absolutely nothing. And even into 2010, still the same situation. No one had anything good to say. They all said, be careful, it's so bad, blah, 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 right? And here's why they said that. The reason being is if you look at the stock market 5 years later was at the same level. The same level 5 years later, right? So people had seen nothing but really losses or, let's call it the stock market doing a whole lot of nothing for many, many years. Now, the stock market didn't do nothing for all those years. And here's what people don't tell you. I'm going to show you exactly what they don't tell you. Here's what they don't tell you. If you were buying throughout the entire great financial crisis crash, you made a fortune. The only people that didn't make a fortune in the great financial crisis were the individuals that chose to not buy during that crash. Because think about it like this, right? Let's say you just bought one share of the S&P 500 as the stock market crashed and as the stock market came back, right? So you bought one share at 1,500, 1,400, 1,300, 1,200, 1,100, 1,000, 900, 800, 700, right? And then you bought all the way back up. Look at how this math works, okay? So your cost basis, and remember, you started buying at the peak of the market, which is so unrealistic, buying at the peak of the market. But we're going to say you have the worst time possible, and you started your buying at the literal peak of the market, right? So your cost basis on those shares you bought are $19,800, right, on your 18 shares. The 18 shares then is then worth $27,000, which means you have $7,200 of gains. Now, this is over like a 5+ year span. And so you would hopefully be buying a lot more than a share over that time period, right? Hopefully you'd be buying like 5 shares or 10 shares or whatever, right? Each time period over that 5-year span. So you could say this $7,200 of gains might end up being $72,000 of gains. So yeah, the stock market had nothing to show for it over that 5 years or so, but you could have still made a fortune just buying the indexes and just buying them consistently over time. You didn't have to time it out perfect. You didn't have to buy right at the bottom. Oh, I went all in right at the bottom. No. If you just bought consistently during that entire crash, and then as you came out of the crash, you made a fortune. And that's the part they never tell you. All they say is, whoa, look at it, went down so much. Oh, be scared of the stock market. They never tell you about, oh yeah, it ended up coming all back over the coming years. And if you were buying during the crash and as the comeback happened, you made a fortune. That's the part they will never tell you. And the people that usually want to avoid that part are people that don't understand math, or it's individuals that they're too scared to be buying during a crash and as you come out of the crash, right? And so they want to try to scare you to make you feel better about not buying during corrections and crashes. When we do know factually the best time to be buying stocks in the stock market is during stock market corrections and during stock market crashes. It's an absolutely amazing time to be buying and buying. You buy the whole way down and the whole way back up. And you don't worry about timing in and out. You don't worry about, I got to buy right at the bottom. I'm going all in at the bottom. No. Keep it simple. There's a great saying. I don't know who came up with this. It said, keep it simple, stupid. Don't make this more complicated than it has to be. Other people want to try to time in at the perfect time. I'm going to margin. I'm going to go all in call option. Don't worry about all that foolishness. There's so much money to be made if you just keep it simple. Keep it simple. Now, one of the great things about being a human is learning the ability to have delayed gratification. I would say the far majority of people like that instant gratification, right? They need to have that gratification all the time, which is why they need the stock market to be going up all the time. If the stock market doesn't go up over a year span or 2 year span or 5 year span, it wrecks people because they need that instant gratification. But you got to understand, you as a human, you can train your brain to not need this instant gratification crap all the time, right? You don't need to be the TikToker that's all, I'm scrolling TikToks. Where's the dopamine hit? You don't need to be like that. Not at all, right? And you got to understand, in the stock market, the best time to buy is when the least gratification is going on. When people are least satisfied with the stock market, right? When there's no dopamine hits going on because everybody's just losing money, it's the best time to be buying during that particular time period. And you know when actually the worst time to buy is? It's when everybody is going through massive gratification during that particular time. And everybody is just getting the dopamine high of, I just hit a new high. That's usually the worst time to buy. Think back to prior to the great financial crisis. Think back to the tech bubble, right? Think back to late 2021, right? Everybody's all hyped up on stocks. We're all going to be billionaires. That is actually the time you need to be a little more worried about the market. But when time periods are like, man, everybody's can't make money out here, it's the best time to be a buyer of stocks. Now, I posted something very important on X last night. I said, I see a lot of bragging about Tesla stock going up the past few trading days. And there was a lot of that on X yesterday. I said, listen, no one should be bragging about Tesla stock unless you bought prior to 2020. I said, Tesla stock's lower today than it was in January 2021. Now, some people took that as, well, Jeremy's trying to take shots at Tesla. No. I'm taking shots directly at the same exact individuals. There will be the same individuals selling Tesla stock at $100 if that stock goes down to $100. It's the same exact bunch. It's these individuals that get caught up into what's going on in the short-term stock prices. And so Tesla stock goes up a few days in a row, and they're, cheering. And then Tesla stock could go down for 6 months straight and go down to $100 a share. And that same exact bunch will be the same people selling as the stock hits 200, as the stock hits 175, as the stock hits 150, 125, 100. Not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying if it does, all those same people will be the people selling because it's the same exact mentality. They think emotionally about the stock market and the stock price moves. They do not think fundamentally about this. And you gotta understand the difference. I posted this. Somebody was talking about Cathie Wood, ARK Invest, right? I posted, ARK Invest 5-year returns versus Meta versus Amazon versus the NASDAQ versus S&P 500, right? And obviously the ARK fund's performance has been absolutely awful, right? And you got to understand, back in that 2021 time frame, a lot of people were getting in that ARK fund because they were chasing gratification. It was the hot thing. People were making so much money, right? And they weren't thinking about the fundamentals. They weren't thinking about all the fundamentals of the companies ARK owned. They were just thinking about, look at the gratification going on here, right? Avoid that short-term gratification. Focus on the fundamentals, right? If you study, almost any religion, right? Or you're any sort of spiritual person, religious person, you understand that patience is one of the most important things in life. It's one of the keys to life, understanding patience, right? And if you look at the Bible, there's a lot, and I mean a lot of references going back to patience and how important it is. Patience is so incredibly important, right? God often described as patient, demonstrating the importance of enduring trials and trusting in a higher power's timing, right? If I think about myself, this is actually a video that got suggested to me on my, Apple nowadays on your iPhone sometimes will suggest like old videos or pictures, and it suggested this one of my firstborn son walking, right? And, it's crazy. This was back July 2015. And at that time I had 6 figures in stocks, right? And we were living in a 3-bedroom apartment. And that was a time period when I would say God wanted me to figure things out. I was trying to figure out where I'm going. I took off a full year from work. I left Quick Trip. I felt like that was a good stepping stone for me. And it was like, I need to figure out where I'm going here, right? But I was patient. I didn't get impatient. I said, I'm going to figure this out. I didn't get impatient with my trust. I didn't get impatient with God. I didn't say, I'm in this 3-bedroom apartment. I want to be in a mansion. No. I stayed patient with it, right? I was driving this car at that particular time. It was a Nissan Versa, right? It wasn't a Ferrari. It wasn't a Tesla. It was a Nissan Versa, right? And I was very thankful. And I had patience. I was very, very thankful. And you know why I was very, very thankful? Because that car had AC and heat that worked. And my first car I ever had was a 1977 Mercedes. And this car had no AC. And I drove that car for 3 summers in the Arizona heat. Phoenix, Arizona, one of the hottest places literally on this planet you could live. And that had no AC. And so when I had my Nissan Versa, I was very thankful for that. Very, very thankful, right? In this car, I remember, man, being embarrassed to even, take a girl in that car because the seats were all falling apart. If you sit on the seat, it would come off on your clothing because the car was just so old. The window didn't work. If somebody tried to roll down the window, you had to try to shove it with your hand, And so I remember back to those days, and I was thankful for my Nissan Versa, even though that wasn't the most exciting car, right? And I was also thankful for my 3-bedroom apartment I was living in at that time, right? Not the most glitzy or glamorous place, but I also remember prior to that, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And then I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. And so having a 3-bedroom apartment and being able to have a room for my son and being able to have an office in my place, that was awesome. That was awesome, right? And I stayed patient with it, right? And nowadays, obviously, we leveled up a little bit, and I'm very thankful for where I live. Doesn't mean I don't want more, right? I would love to live in this place. I really want to live in this place someday, but I'm patient with it. It's not the time for me to buy a $22 million penthouse in New York City. It's not the time, right? And so I don't get impatient with it. I don't say, God, why do I not have this thing? I'm so thankful for what I do have, right? That's what's important in this game. Be thankful for what you have. Have patience in this, right? And it reminds me, you guys ever remember this? I think it's J.G. Wentworth or something like that. You remember that commercial back in the day on TV all the time? It's my money and I need it now. It's my money and I want it now. And this is how investors act in the market. They have no patience to go through these cycles of the stock market not doing anything, the stock market downtrending. It's part of the game. If you can't go through a stock market that's downtrending for a while or doesn't go anywhere for a while, you can't be in this game. It's part of the process. If you can't go through that, you don't deserve to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market. You don't deserve to make millions of dollars or tens of millions or hundreds of millions. You don't deserve any of that because you can't go through the tough times. And if there's one thing we do know about life, in order to get to the good times, you do have to go through tough times. That is just the reality, right? Now, the GOAT, Mr. Warren Buffett, he's got some of the greatest quotes ever talking about patience in the market, right? So someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. And I'm sure a lot of people look at me and oh my gosh, he's got millions and millions and millions in stocks. What a life. He's got rental properties, all that stuff, right? 16 years of work, 16 years of grinding, 16 years of focus got me to this place I am today. And if I'm fortunate enough to be here another 16 years, right, at that particular time, we'll look back and probably be some crazy numbers, and we'll look back and be like, wow, look at where he's at now, right? But that will take another 16 years of work to get to that sort of place, right? And so with your portfolios, you got to think in your financial life and your net worth, you got to make sure you're planting the trees today that are these little teeny things that are going to become the big trees that are going to give you countless fruit in the future.